up? It is your boy Nick. So the fandom has a history of whenever a brand, movie, or publication has an anthropomorphic character, the entire world groans. Even people in the fandom, knowing how quickly furry art, safe for work or not, will come from it. You know, I'm not generally a fan of sports. I'm not a fan of competition or the aggressive nature of both sides, rooting for a brand composed of people they don't know, and it's just not my thing. So yesterday was the Super Bowl, and affectionately the fandom proclaimed it to be the Furry Bowl, as both mascots were animals. I didn't even know this until I found out that the Rams had won. How did I find out, you might ask? Well, let me show you. You know the deal. Loser gets 8, score decides how much weight they put on. I'll do 100+ pounds for every point they lead. If it's like a 20-point blowout, I'll make them fill the stadium. And surely enough, Rams had won 23-20. I have absolutely no issue with this artist. Like, this is just one individual making artwork, and it's unclear if this is like a general tradition within the vor and inflation community. I would cry laughing if it was, because that's really funny. But basically, any sports fans NSFW furries are sure to have their own interpretations of this win. But I thought this was actually a great time to start the conversation of how furries project themselves to outsiders in terms of brand mascots. So a lot of people take issue with how the fandom interacts with brands and mascots being blatantly sexual, even if it has proper barriers in place, because of a select minority that do it with absolutely no barriers at all. It happened with the main character of Bad Guys. Within hours, people had already drawn him in lewd, and hundreds of art pieces spawned of the character that were open for a lot of people to see. It's drawing NFTs in lewd as a protest to the general egotistical nature of NFT bros in an act of defiance. Tony the Tiger from Frosted Flakes even had to issue a statement to refrain from the artwork, as the brand would not like to be associated with that, considering the fact that they are a children's cereal. And then there's like just Pokemon. I don't even think I have to say more about that one. A lot of this is also leading to like the Skittles art contest. This is a situation that happened not long ago, and I've been wanting to talk about it, and I figured that this is probably the best time to do so. So the Skittles art contest ended out to be a call to action that was made after Skittles made an art contest to draw a persona for the brand. Sooner than like rally to express that the company shouldn't exploit artists or by making a competition just to advertise themselves off of free labor and just commission artwork, a furry actually called for a counter contest. $5 to the person who draws the most outrageous NSFW images of a bag of Skittles wearing fox ears just getting completely railed by a strangely muscular horseman, which by itself is fairly harmless furry tomfoolery, but actually led to some people responding directly to the Skittles post sooner than the hoster of the contest, something that he could not have foreseen. This means anyone following Skittles could simply look in the replies and find the most egregious porn if it wasn't blocked quickly enough. Furries will always be seen as sex-grave deviants by at least a few. But actively disrespecting people by putting NSFW in spaces with no warning is just not okay. Even still, several news articles did favorably talk about and understand that the contest was simply a coordinated f*** you to a company that tried to, market off the backs of artists. One narrative that I did see pushed was that companies shouldn't be allowed to try to pander to furries in order to potentially cash grab. I actually personally find this very dumb point, because there really isn't an issue with that unless it is blatant hypocrisy and they're actively bigots behind the scene. Otherwise, for brands to openly embrace LGBT and fandom is nothing but a positive as they become more mainstream and accepted. People constantly push companies away because the idea that more brands will encroach and actively try to sanitize the fandom for profit, which I think is absolutely silly. I am personally of the belief that the fandom does so much good for its community and LGBT community, but forcibly acting more sexual and pushing the narrative that no one is safe from furry porn is honestly just disingenuous to what the fandom means to a lot of people, and especially ones that don't associate with that part of the fandom. Within this fandom, there's everyone from like 11 years old to like 70 or more. There are people all over the globe from different backgrounds and affiliations that generally come together because of this sense of community that we harbor. And the fact is, there's actually a very loud minority that openly flaunt the ability to sexualize characters, and it can be humorous if satirical, but it can easily misrepresent our entire community if it is done without respect to the people who are not involved. People embracing furries and furry becoming more mainstream is not a bad thing. It's Australia commissioning a furry artist to draw their Olympic mascots as furries and loving it so much they commissioned dozens of pieces, and the popularity of them skyrocketed across the globe. It is having an entire movie going to be dedicated to a girl who is who is able to project who she really wants to be when she transforms into a red panda, realizing that she might not actually be happy with herself, and finally having the escapism to find who that is. Furries are being seen on a global scale, and that's not a bad thing, but actively creating lewd art in a manner that does not at least make some effort to provide barriers for those who don't want to be a part of it to not be a part of it is not something I think that we should do. But sooner, out of respect for those outside our community, those uncomfortable with NSFW, and young people who should not be exposed to it. The idea of the vor and inflation of sports teams versus sports teams is fine, because in that sense, it's literally just a community of people who are into sports and relation having their own interactions. They're not advocating for this art to simply be pushed onto anyone of the opposing team. It's literally just this big inside joke. This video, I really just wanted to serve as a reminder that there is absolutely zero issue with drawing and creating NSFW of brands and anthropomorphic characters, but at the same time, this reputation stems from the blatant public appearance that this art often makes. I'm completely fine with memeing and dunking on brands that try to exploit artists, or ones that project blatant hypocrisy, or even brands that unknowingly cater to furries. But all I ask is for those that do it, please do your part to keep it respectful by properly tagging your work, but at the same time, the audience recognize their own personal responsibility to block tags that actively offend or disturb them. I think if we all do our part to properly categorize art, make sure those who want to see it can and those who don't have to, I think the fandom will help itself not only lose a lot of stigma it holds onto, but invite a lot more people into the community and keep it safer. But with this, however, I was presented a lot of questions that I genuinely don't have answers to, but I want to see your guys' opinions, so maybe I can consider them for myself. What do you think that counts as a proper barrier to NSFW art? Is tagging art enough, right? Getting specific with it so people can navigate NSFW space without seeing certain things they don't want to, or not seeing it at all. What responsibility do NSFW artists hold if minors or those who are uncomfortable with their work actively seek them out despite the artist properly tagging their work? There's the question of where does suggestive content go in all of this? Content that's not necessarily NSFW, but might be implied or suggestive. Is 16 plus a category that should be expanded upon to highlight that something isn't necessarily sexual, but might have suggestive themes? Where do thumbnails belong in all of this? That's a huge topic of conversation of, is it ethical to use cropped GIF or suggestive thumbnails, even though the content actually has nothing to do with them, and it simply helps the algorithm push the video out more? Is that okay simply because it is just an attention grabber and doesn't actually feature any sexual acts explicitly? Is it okay to hold creators responsible for the fact that they might be unaware of how many minors might actually be in their audience? Is it okay to force creators to certain standards simply because it is not accurately known how many minors are actively pushing past the barriers that creator might set up? Is it okay to hold the creator responsible for the actions of their audience? Should all NSFW art be privatized despite the fact that it will actively stifle their reach and output even to those who want to consume that content and may harm their sources of revenue? I do know several NSFW Discord servers that do take IDs before entering. Should NSF artists do that as well? Is that dangerous? Is that helpful? Should people do that on Twitter as well? Regardless if they have 10 followers or 30,000, where does the obligation of the artist end and responsibility of the audience begin? I am teaching myself how to navigate Twitter, and apparently if you follow someone you can see their likes, which is a little unhinged in my opinion, but where does that fall into this category? If you like something NSFW, does that consider you an After Dark account just because people who follow you can see what you like? There's a lot of questions in this regard, but the thing is, we cannot move forward as a fandom with this just continuously being an infighting topic. We need to have this conversation continually and update our views on it so we can treat every situation with the individuality that it deserves. But the thing is, it's a lot easier for people just to paint everything with a black and white brush, so I want to have this conversation so we can kind of figure out what we actually expect from one another, so people who want to be NSFW can, but people who don't feel the need to be in that space. I just thought that this was a good way to introduce the conversation, and because there are a lot of people who are upset with the current appearance of the fandom. There are still people who want to just completely remove the NSFW side. It's a very ongoing conversation. I want to know your guys' comments down below. If you have not subscribed, please do. Literally, YouTube refuses to acknowledge me. Either way, I want to thank my patrons, the people who have literally stuck by me this entire time. Despite the fact that I did need to take so long of a mental health break, I could not appreciate you guys more. But at the end of the day. My name is Nick. Remember, keep it short, keep it sweet, and keep it simple. Have a lovely rest of your day, guys. I'll see you next time.